Yes, the Bible does give the day when everything starts. Not the year, but the day. I don't know how we've missed it. This is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's cut to the chase. So, what day is it, and what set of verses describes this should be the day to watch in comparison to all other biblical possibilities? How does it harmonize with the rest of Scripture and the very words of Yeshua himself? Let's get into it. It's the 10th day of the 10th month. Now, I've covered this day before, as it's one of the 4 fasts that gets turned to a feast. We'll cover more on that in a moment. But why this day? Okay, here it is. Ezekiel 24, starting in verse 1. In the 9th year, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, the word of Yahweh came to me. Son of man, write down the name of this day, this very day. The king of Babylon has laid siege to Jerusalem this very day. So 3 times Yahweh confirms this day as something important. Verse 3. And utter a parable to the rebellious house, and say to them, Thus says the Lord Yahweh. Now remember, the book of Ezekiel was written after the Babylonian invasion. In fact, it was written in Babylon during the 70-year banishment. Thus, the reference to this being the same day Babylon laid siege to Jerusalem. Here, in the rest of verse 3, Yahweh gives that parable, and it goes through verse 13. For the sake of time, I'm asking you to please read the parable for yourself. It's a parable of great devastation. But look how he concludes the parable in verse 14. I am Yahweh. I have spoken. It shall come to pass. I will do it. I will not go back. I will not spare. I will not relent. According to your ways and your deeds, you will be judged, declares Lord Yahweh. So, Yahweh first tells Ezekiel to take special note of this day 3 times. This very day, the 10th day of the 10th month, the day Babylon began surrounding Jerusalem. He then gives a devastating parable and says it's going to come again. How many times have we read right over this? Yahweh said to mark that day, that very day, and then declares what's coming on that very day. Ezekiel is constantly being given elements to the end times throughout his book. Devastating elements. In fact, it's in chapter 4 that I've covered multiple times, where we see Jerusalem get surrounded for 40 days. And that prophecy includes judgment falling on the northern kingdom just the same. And now, here in chapter 24, Yahweh tells Ezekiel when that siege will take place, on the anniversary to the siege from Babylon, the 10th day of the 10th month. Yahweh is showing Ezekiel what he declared through Isaiah. He makes known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. Though it may not be identical, history is cyclical, and it's obvious Yahweh is telling Ezekiel it will start again on this very day. This is the very siege Yeshua is talking about when he said in Luke 21, When you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, you will know that its desolation is near. And Ezekiel is being told what day it starts on. That siege is what kicks off the first 5 seals, the 4 horsemen. People don't realize, but it's also Ezekiel who first prophesies all the devastation of the 4 horsemen as given in Revelation. Ezekiel 5:17 and 14:21 directly parallels what's given in Revelation 6:8. Revelation is only confirming what's already been decreed from the prophets. These are first brought up in Ezekiel chapter 5, right after we see chapter 4 discussing the 40-day siege on Jerusalem that Yeshua references. The timing is all there. And these 4 plagues all start at the same time. As we've discussed in multiple other teachings, though the seals have been broken, they've been delayed from happening. This is seen in Revelation chapter 10. We see Yeshua, the Lion of Judah, holding the now opened scroll, declaring there will be no more delay, showing the events from the broken seals of the scroll has been delayed. But again, the seals are first prophesied in Ezekiel. And it's Ezekiel 4 that Yeshua is directly referencing when he says it all starts with Jerusalem getting surrounded. The event that Yahweh tells Ezekiel will happen in correlation with the Babylonian invasion, the 10th day of the 10th month. And yes, the people of Yahweh will know it's coming, as given in these verses here. Yahweh's people won't be caught off guard when it all goes down. They will know. And Ezekiel 24 gives us the day, the 10th day of the 10th month, one of the 4 fasts that gets turned to a feast. Now, as I've noted in other teachings, these 4 fasts are directly referencing the key dates related to the Babylonian invasion at the first destruction of the temple, seen on this timeline with several details to that destruction. I've discussed the 10th day of the 10th month before in multiple other teachings. I'll link those below. But when I covered it then, like in all of our other teachings, I was simply looking at possibilities. In fact, look at what I said from our teaching, Watching for That Day. Though history shows the chronological order of events, putting the 10th month as happening first, the word from Yahweh to Zechariah has it last. This, of course, could be because that would be the natural sequence of how the months fall in a year. But it could also be because that will be the natural order for them in the end. So even here, I did acknowledge the day, but was clearly leaning to the thought that this day would find its time of being turned to a feast day at the end and not the beginning. While there's evidence in the context to the verse in Zechariah 8 showing this will be a time under Yeshua's reign, like many other texts, the modern state of Israel will use it for their purposes. On July 24th of 2023, the Temple Institute made a Facebook post saying, "The time has come to leave the mourning behind and begin in earnest to build the third and eternal holy temple." And just this year, on July 15th, in the midst of fasting for the 4th and 5th month, the Temple Institute posted this on Facebook. "Too long, Israel has mourned the destruction of the Holy Temple. The time to build is now." In a podcast they linked on that post, they said the following at the 13-minute and 54-second mark. "Now that Israel is back in the land of Israel, has sovereignty over the Temple Mount, then simply mourning isn't enough." And then, on July 30th of this year, they made a post that said, "Growing tired of the mourning? Roll up your sleeves. It's time to build." They're ready to turn the 4 fasts into feasts, and they're ready to do it now. And they'll declare it's the fulfillment of Zechariah 8, where all the fasts are turned to feasts. Now, you're probably thinking, how can the 10th day of the 10th month be the day that gets turned into a feast if it's the day judgment begins? Actually, it's quite simple. Remember, Yeshua gives 2 reasons for those living in Jerusalem to flee: seeing the abomination that causes desolation, as seen here in Mark chapter 13, verse 14, and seeing the armies that surround Jerusalem, as seen here in Luke chapter 21, verse 20. The abomination of desolation will be what the modern state of Israel will rejoice over. And it will also be the very reason why Jerusalem gets surrounded. Thus the words of Paul when he said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, "While people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Paul knew Yeshua said the first thing to be seen was the abomination of desolation, and he knew that would be the cause of Jerusalem being surrounded. Thus, his words, while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly. And in their mind's eye, when the ark comes out, that will be the cause of peace and safety for them. But when they begin the sacrifices, it will turn right around and be the beginning of their judgment. So yes, the 10th day of the 10th month will be turned to a feast day. And because of that, Jerusalem will be surrounded. The abomination of desolation will be the reason the armies surround Jerusalem. As many of you know from our previous teachings, I believe the abomination of desolation will be the Ark of the Covenant and or the sacrificial system being reinstated. One or both of these will be the reason the 40-day siege on Jerusalem takes place. I believe it's very possible the ark comes out first, and then that will be what ignites the passion into action to set up the sacrificial system again, thus causing Jerusalem to be surrounded as prophesied through Ezekiel 4. These 40 days will conclude with Jerusalem being invaded. That invasion will be a time of absolute devastation, but it will also be mirrored around the world on the northern kingdom just the same. Regarding the 10th day of the 10th month, when it all starts, there are two other biblical dates closely leading up to it. That being the 24th day of the 9th month and the first day of the 10th month. The 24th day of the 9th month is the day Haggai says we are blessed. 7 days after that, we land on the first day of the 10th month, the day the mountaintops started being visible after the flood. Obviously, the 24th day of the 9th month is prophetically significant. We discussed this day in detail in our teaching, The End Times According to Haggai. Will we see something in the physical, or could this be something that only happens in the spiritual realm? I don't know. And though seeing the mountains for the first time after the flood on the first day of the 10th month may not seem very significant, it's still a biblical date Yahweh made sure we knew about. And with it being 10 days before the day we're watching, I can't help but think of the 10 virgins, or the 10 days the Church of Smyrna is warned about. So, could we see something happen on either of these two dates leading up to the 10th day of the 10th month? I don't know. But just as Noah received a 7-day warning, deep in my heart, I'm hoping we get something like that as well. Up to this point, I've leaned to the thought that the seals begin at the end of the 40-day siege on Jerusalem. However, I'm currently seeing the seals happening during the 40-day siege. It's in Ezekiel 4 where we see this siege as a warning to the house of Israel, the northern kingdom that spread all over the world. When we see this warning happen, it's saying those 40 days will be a time of intense trouble and persecution, not only for Jerusalem, but also for believers around the world. It's the sign, possibly starting off slow, but increasingly getting harder with each passing day. Or it could be everything, everywhere, all at once, starting immediately on the 10th day of the 10th month. One thing will be for sure. The time of warning people will be over. The time of judgment will then begin, and there will be no escaping it. If this is the case, I'm really praying for a warning of some kind. Thus, the first 5 seals could actually be happening during these 40 days. 40 days of intense persecution on the church, even resulting in martyrdom, as shown in the 5th seal. And then the resurrection takes place at the end of the 40 days. Like Yeshua said, he'd raise up his followers on the last day. Could he have been actually referencing the end of the 40-day siege as prophesied by Ezekiel? I mean, we already know he referenced the 40-day siege to be what starts it all off. The last day resurrection could easily be a direct reference to the last day of that very siege. So, the first 5 seals take place during the 40 days, with the last day bringing the 6th seal. This would also include the destruction of Babylon. Now, though the resurrection would take place, I believe the marriage of the Lamb would still happen on Shavuot. As many of you know, up to this point, I've leaned very heavily to the thought that the resurrection, what many call the rapture, would most likely take place at the time of Shavuot, that being Pentecost. And I still believe Shavuot will be the day of the new covenant, just like it was with the covenant under Moses. Likewise, with Yeshua, the prophet likened unto Moses, the new covenant will be at Shavuot as well. However, just as Yahweh delivered his people from Egypt first, and then led them to the mountain for the wedding covenant, there's reason to believe the resurrection could happen before the day of the wedding just the same. We already know our salvation came through Yeshua at Passover, just like it did in Egypt. So, the resurrection could still happen well before Shavuot. An interesting element to this timing of the 10th day of the 10th month is how it actually ties with some other things Yeshua said. Things like, pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath, as given in Matthew 24. Well, the 10th month is in the winter, and the 40-day siege would end in the 11th month, which is the month of Shabbat. As noted in our teaching, Understanding the Winter or the Sabbath, the Hebrew word for Sabbath is Shabbat. So, Yeshua could have been discussing the month of Shabbat and not the day of Shabbat. Also, when Yeshua was carrying his cross on the way to be crucified, we see him saying, "For if men do these things when the tree is green, what will happen when it is dry?" Well, trees are only dry in the winter. And notice the verse right before. It says, "Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.'" What does this sound like? You guessed it, the 6th seal in Revelation 6. The time we see the kings and generals and so many others hide in caves and say, "Fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb." It's a direct parallel, and Yeshua gives the timing to be in the winter. And that would be the day of the 6th seal, the day of the great earthquake, the day Babylon is destroyed at the end of the 40 days so the Antichrist can begin his rule over all the world. This is seen here in Revelation chapter 7. We see it's Yahweh himself who puts it into the hearts of the beast and the 10 kings to destroy Babylon the harlot. And so the Antichrist will begin his rule with Babylon out of the way. But it all starts on the 10th day of the 10th month, as Yahweh gave to Ezekiel in chapter 24, making history repeat again as prophesied through Isaiah. The 4 horsemen will begin riding that day. Exactly how we missed this, I don't know. But I believe this is something we need to start watching. Well, that's all I have. Think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom. Okay.